Hello, all. Summer has finally hit Buffalo, New York. We actually have 80-degree temperatures, and it's
Finally.
sticky. Yeah, it's unbelievable. What a concept. I mean, although it did rain yesterday, like a torrential downpour for about 20 minutes. This has been possibly the worst summer in the history of Western New York. After we had a horrific winter, we just been getting rain constantly. It's like Seattle.
Summer here has been pretty good. I mean, I know some people have complained they haven't seen enough sunshine. I'm good with it. There have been some cool days. I'm okay when there's cool days. Look, anything's better than winter. Anything.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. Russ, I wanted to talk about some concert stuff. I'm heading up to Toronto tomorrow to see the Foo Fighters at Molson Amphitheater, which coincidentally goes the same time as the Pan American Games. So I basically have to leave at like 8 a.m. to get up there for a 7 p.m. concert. But this week in Buffalo, the Rolling Stones, the Rolling Ugly, as they call them, are at Ralph Wilson Stadium. And I'm always puzzled when I remember watching an interview with Robert Plant with George Stroumboulopoulos on his show on CBC, and he asked him the question that every music lover is asked, Beatles or Stones? And Robert Plant said Stones. And I scratched my head because for somebody I admire like Robert Plant, I don't know how anybody in their right mind can pick the Stones over the Beatles.
Yeah, I would never. And honestly, I don't listen to either one of them really in my spare time. I appreciate them.
Yeah.
I could hum along with their songs. I probably know most of their songs just because of radio play when they were younger.
Sure.
But yeah, I would take Beatles over Stones every time.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the Stones are an iconic band, and especially that era in the late 60s and early 70s with Mick Taylor playing guitar. I thought they were a fantastic band. But, ever since like the 80s when they did Emotional Rescue and a lot of the sort of disco stuff that they did, which, it had that feel to it, and then Start Me Up. Everything since like, I'd say 77 forward to me has just been a waste. And they're playing, like I said, they're playing in Buffalo. You'd have to pay me to go to the Rolling Stones concert.
Yeah, I literally, when I was a DirecTV person, when I was a subscriber, they had a Rolling Stones concert that they gave me for being a good customer for free. That was like probably 10, 15 years ago. I couldn't get through 10 minutes of it. I just couldn't. It was just bad. I mean, some of the music sounded fine, but Mick's voice was just even beyond awful. I mean, I saw him at Live Aid, and I felt like he was still good then, and that was 30 years ago.
Yeah. And obviously the argument is moot right now because 2 of the 4 Beatles are dead, and
right.
You couldn't have a Beatles reunion tour. But if they were all alive and you put them head to head, I think the Beatles would be drawing a lot more and would have a lot more interest in the Stones. I mean, the Stone, right? I call it a tour sponsored by AARP because honestly, you got a bunch of geriatrics on stage, and God. Hey, they're making money and people are going, so they're going to keep going until they croak.
It's like people's last chance to see them, and I guess if they want to see that, quote, best rock and roll band ever, go ahead, but they're 75 years old. I don't want to see them.
Right, and you know what? For the and that's not exactly a reunion tour, but for the nostalgia tour, I would rather go see the Eagles, who are coming to Buffalo and some later this month, who I've seen live performances on YouTube or, on video somewhere. And, Don Henley can still sing and they can still play and they can still put on a good show. But everything I've seen of the Rolling Stones, like if it was Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or anything like that, it's cringingly bad.
For Stones fans, sorry, Charlie Watts is 74. So, I didn't want to overstate that. The problem with the Eagles is they charge way too much money. They got very greedy over the years. And they went from playing nothing to all of a sudden playing a lot of concerts for like $200 a seat. So good luck with them.
And we'll get on to hockey in a second, but I mentioned this before we went live here with Russ, and the Eagles charging too much is a good segue to this point. A friend of mine on my Twitter feed or on my Facebook feed posted something, and I don't know if it was in Toronto last night or if it was at a recent U2 show, but there was a U2 cover band who was stage side for a recent U2 show, and Bono was talking to these guys in between songs, and they said that they cover their stuff, and Bono calls them on stage, and the 4 members of this cover band play along with U2 the song Desire, an acoustic version of Desire.
Right.
Now, honestly, Russ, U2 is on my bucket list, but I don't go because the tickets are too ridiculous, 250 something, like that kind of money.
Oh yeah.
If I paid $250, the last thing I want to see is a freaking cover band singing Desire. I pay the $250. I want to see Bono singing Desire.
Right.
So, I just don't get it. I really don't get it. But, maybe this is just, they've been touring for so long. They like to do things sort of outside the box, and they want to, they're having a little fun and fine. But as a paying fan, honestly, like if I go to see Rush, I don't want to see somebody covering Geddy Lee playing Working Man. I want to see Geddy Lee playing Working Man. Yeah,
it's kind of weird. I mean, now, is the cover band going to play different songs than the actual band? I would hope.
Well, this was like in the middle of the show. They bring
in the middle.
This wasn't an opening act. This was Bono called them out in the middle of the show, and they played along with them. And I'm
I see what you're saying. I misunderstood that. Yeah, you know what? It's Bono's choice, man. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
just paying homage to him. I mean, at this point, I can't get crazy over it. Like, how many songs did they play?
I think it was just the one.
All right, so that's fine. It's the same as Jackson Brown getting called up into somebody else's show for us. I mean, it's not Jackson Brown, but I know what you're saying. But I don't think it's that bad.
All I can say is, I'm sure there is a U2 fan out there that had never seen them, and their favorite song is Desire. And the one chance that they have to see them, this cover band is ruining their version of Desire by playing along with U2. And all they want to see is U2 playing that song. That's all I'm saying. I put myself in the position of that.
I will say this. The closest I've come to that, and I don't know if they ruined Desire or not. I don't know how it sounded. But like at Live Aid, when Patti LaBelle would decide to join a few acts, she was screaming, and she did ruin songs. So to me, that was definitely that kind of moment. But I don't know if this was the same.
Yeah, wow. And we're going to continue to do webcasts throughout the summer. We should have Eck back tomorrow, and we'll have Russ back tomorrow.
Tomorrow. We're going to tell people what – are we going to have the beach report tomorrow? Are we going to tell people what SPF to wear?
Well, I was going to do a baseball segment here because I wanted to tell the fans up in Toronto who are panicking now because the Blue Jays are in the midst of their July swoon. And although I believe they did win yesterday with the immortal Felix Doubront pitching for them, it's funny, Russ. Like right now, I know the Mets are going through their struggles. They need offense. They have like a ton of young quality pitching, but not enough hitting. Whereas the Blue Jays have the exact opposite. They have a phenomenal lineup, and they don't have enough starting pitching to get them to their goal. It's funny. It's like and a team. And okay, sorry people, I'm a Yankees fan. I've been a Yankees fan since I was 9 years old. Everybody thought the Yankees were going to fall apart. They're getting enough pitching, and they're getting enough hitting that they're just ahead of everybody else of all these imperfect teams in the AL East. And unlike the Blue Jays, who are under fiscal restraints, and same with the Mets, to have the ability to add players, the Yankees are going to go out at the July 1st, 31st deadline and add players.
Yeah, sadly they will. I mean, the real thing with baseball is just, to me, it used to be about starting pitching, so the Mets built up their starting pitching, but now it's more about the bullpen, and it's been that way for a couple of years, and I've been writing about it, and the Mets bullpen's gotten a lot better. Yuri's Familia probably should be that last guy in the All-Star team, but it's still not lights out, and then you still have to have hitting. It's way more different than it used to be in the old days. The 73 Mets were 82-80. They won the division. They made it to the World Series. They beat the Big Red Machine. It's not happening that way in this modern era. It's just not. it could get close, but it probably will not happen.
Right. All right, let's start the show, and we'll get into some hockey stuff. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, July 8th, 2015.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and that's all there is. That's it.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockeybuzzcast here on Hockeybuzz.com. As I said, Eklund and possibly Kevin Allen will be back tomorrow. We'll do a show at noon along with Russ and myself. But we'll discuss some of the happenings that are going on in the NHL. A lot of development camps, rookie camps going on throughout the league. Russ, I know that you were at the Flyers camp earlier this week.
Yep.
I'm following what's going on with the Sabres camp in Buffalo, and the Maple Leafs are having their camp up in Collingwood, Ontario. I saw a few comments about Ivan Provorov, their pick at number 7, how he was impressing with his skill.
Yeah, and I left just before that, so I didn't get to see him do anything but stretching yesterday.
Okay.
But he's always been impressive to me. So, this is like probably the first time a lot of people have really seen him, and I've seen him a lot.
Right.
And so that wouldn't impress me anymore. But I can see where it would impress others, and I think that's great. I think that's, it is an exciting thing. I think the important thing about development camp is there's a lot of dull moments because there's a lot of, instruction going on and stretching and other things like that. And so I think rather than you can't look for results. It's not a results-based thing to write about. You can look for attributes. And that's what I do, is I look at attributes and just point out, hey, this is improved from this year to that. Maybe this needs some working on from this year to that. Hey, this guy looks bigger. Hey, I talk to him, I get some quotes, but it's not a results-based time there. And so, but things have changed. I mean, 2 years ago, I got to watch a lot of the Flyers do their testing. Now it's all behind closed doors. So, every year those things sort of change, and that's fine. The Flyers have a new goalie coach in Kim Dillabaugh, and he was with Hextall in LA, and so there was he interviewed, but again, he can't say a lot because this is the first time he's worked with these guys. He hasn't even been in town that long. So I don't blame him for not being that forthcoming, but I got a lot out of the guys about what he was looking for. And so that's where you look. You talk to the guys, they'll tell you about the coach. Coach is not going to tell you about what his plan is when he's brand new and he's not even sure what the plan is. So, those are a few things that, fans could be looking for. And I think that's what I've been sort of trying to gauge. And so, like, I did put what Dillabaugh has instilled in these young goalies up on Twitter earlier. And so those are the things. You look for those things. You look for strength. You look for extra speed, those kinds of things. But even like at the end, like the Flyers on Sunday will play a 3-on-3 scrimmage. I won't be there because 3-on-3 doesn't resemble hockey. And so there's nothing results-based in that if a guy scored 6 goals, it wouldn't matter to me.
Well, it's funny because the common thread between, say, Buffalo, Toronto, and Philadelphia, you all have there's all new head coaches
right
for those teams.
They've had there too. Yep.
Right, and you have prospects that have been going to their rookie camp. I know I've been going to the Leafs rookie camp for 3 or 4 years, and they've all been working with Randy Carlyle and the staff of the AHL team. Now the staff of the AHL team in Toronto is completely different. Carlisle is gone. Now it's
right.
Mike Babcock. In Buffalo, it's the same thing with Dan Bylsma. So these players who have, had an idea of what the organization expected from them, it's now topsy-turvy. It's now completely different. And I know, with Toronto, they started the first day of their development camp up in Collingwood playing road hockey, it looks like on a softball diamond or something like that. They were doing some skill work, on ice, but they're also doing sort of team building stuff. So,
and that's what the Flyers are doing today. They're doing their team building today. It's always good to have one day for that kind of thing because it's the only time they get these kids together really all year until next year, unless all of a sudden, a bunch of them make the team or get called up or whatever the circumstance might be. So it's the only time they can sort of get together and sort of know each other outside of just being draft picks for this team. And that is an important thing. I don't think you could overstate it. We might make fun of it because, hey, the Flyers kids will be playing volleyball. I played against them one year. The guys joked with me. It was 2 years ago, and I ran into Scott Lawton at the net. We both were growing up for the for a ball, and so the guys who were refereeing went right up to Scott Lawton and said, "Hey, you okay? Whatever." And I'm like, I'm an old guy here. Why don't you see how I am and not see how the 18-year-old Studley hockey player is? So it was kind of funny, but the writers sort of said, "Hey, remember when you almost ruined Scott Lawton's career?"
Yeah, I was gonna say that he trips over your foot and tears an ACL. Like hockey reporter injures Flyers prospect. I mean, oh my God. Well, okay. I wanted to talk about this for a couple minutes here about the players from the 2015 draft. I mean, showed yesterday some highlights of Connor McDavid, lighting it up at the rookie camp in Edmonton.
5 goals, and we really
right. I mean, please
around the world, right?
Right. I mean, the thing is, he's miles above everybody, and he's going to make the NHL this year. And he's playing against 18-year-old kids who probably are 3 or 4 years away from making the NHL, if at all.
Right.
So, he's got an advantage. And now, I mean, Jack Eichel is more than likely going to make the Sabres. He's not going back to Boston U. He's gonna be there. But right now, Dylan Strome has signed his entry-level deal with Arizona, but the intention is that he's going to go back to the Erie Otters. Mitch Marner hasn't signed his entry-level deal yet, but probably will, and he's bound for London. The question is, of this first round, and we can't go into every pick, but of this first round, is it just going to be Eichel and McDavid, or do you think there are any more guys, say, in the top 10 that can make the NHL or will make the NHL at 18?
Well, I think Provorov will get to the point where they definitely give him that look-see. And how many games, I don't know. Maybe they'll give him the full 9. Right. I think that's very possible, but they do have a lot of defensemen there. So it's not a given, but I think he's that next guy where he's going to get that long look. As I peruse things, beyond that, I mean, some of these guys still have to get signed. I mean, Noah Hannifin's not even signed because he hasn't decided whether he's going to go to college or what he's exactly going to do. He could go play in the AHL. So, so that's a thing where, so if Hannifin did sign, could he get a few games? Maybe, but I don't expect it. Honestly, I mean, Rantanen's going back. He's under contract. I don't think, I don't think there's anybody else. I think there might be somebody who surprises us that just goes head and shoulders and gets that look. I don't think it's going to be Dylan Strome. Like you said, he's going back. I know it's not Marner. Could Zacha get that look? It's not the Devil's way, so I doubt it. I don't think there's anybody else. Could Timo Meier be that guy?
And he just signed his deal with San Jose yesterday.
He'll get a long look. Maybe they'll even give him a game or two. He might be the only other one that's sort of close that has an NHL body, but that's it. I mean, none of those other guys, none of them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of on the same page. I mean, I honestly can't. I mean, McDavid clearly and Eichel clearly. I think that, and the funny thing is that if it was left up to, the fans in Toronto, I mean, even though I think they've bought into the rebuild and the patience that they're talking about, if Marner lights it up, if he goes into the exhibition schedule and lights it up, there's going to be some people. We've already had Don Cherry go back 5 years and say that the biggest mistake that the Maple Leafs made with Nazem Kadri was not letting Nazem Kadri stay as an 18-year-old when he was the star of their training camp. And I love Don Cherry. I've been a fan of his. Yeah, I've been a fan of his since I was a kid. But you know what? I watched Nazem Kadri in that training camp, and he was defensively inept.
He was. And he didn't have any strength. He did not have man strength, and that's a big deal.
Right, and I think it would have done him a disservice. I mean, I think the best thing that the Maple Leafs did regarding Nazem Kadri is slow things down. They let him go back to junior for another year. They gave him a taste of the NHL. They let him play one game. Then he played a year for the Marlies. And they slowly brought him along. Now, the problem is that even though they slowly brought him along, there are some players who just don't learn the lessons they need to learn in terms of playing a two-way game. And that's one of the reasons that Kadri hasn't been signed to a long-term extension, because there's still some imperfections in his game. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think.
No, I think there's too much emphasis placed on that. I really would like to see some coaches lighten up a little and say, all right, look, I get that guys need to, play both ends of the ice until they can play in the NHL. But there are going to be some that never play good defense. Now, is Nazem Kadri Mario Lemieux? No. But Mario Lemieux never played a stitch of defense. He couldn't wait to jump over the line and get the offensive rush going. He never played a moment's worth of defense. The game has changed. I get it. But Kadri still had 18 goals last year. I don't want to start, demeaning this kid. He's 24. When you score 18 to 20 goals in this NHL, you're a pretty good player. So to me, he was a good pick. He's playing well. And you know what? He'll play a little bit more responsibly. But at the end of the day, you got to let his offense come out. And I think that's what they should do. And I think they'd be mistaken to get rid of him. I do.
Well, and not to make this Leaf buzz, but I think that the plan this year, since they signed him to a 1-year contract, I think they're going to trade Tyler Bozak. This summer I think they can find someone that would be interested in Bozak and make that deal. And the plan is to make Kadri the number 1 center to see whether he can handle that role.
Yeah, you might as well throw him into that. Yeah.
Why not? Exactly. Let's talk about, and I saw this question posed online, and it's sort of an interesting one based on the signings, the 2 big signings over recent days. A lot of people are questioning the amount and term of the deal that the Sabres signed Ryan O'Reilly for. I'm a Ryan O'Reilly fan. I think he's a very good player. I thought that he was sort of pigeonholed in Colorado because Colorado didn't want to pay him as much as Matt Duchene, and I thought he was just as good a player as Matt Duchene. And now he finally gets out from under that, and he goes to Buffalo, and he's the older presence up the middle that allows Eichel maybe to start as a number 2 center while O'Reilly is a number 1. I don't think he's perfectly suited to a number 1. I think eventually Eichel will be the number 1, and then he'll go back to being a second line guy. But they gave up a ton for him in the trade, and he was 1 year away from being an unrestricted free agent. And Buffalo, basically, by giving Colorado what they gave him in exchange for him, they had to sign O'Reilly. They had to. Right. So he was signed for 7 years at $7.5 million. And coincidentally, Sabres fans, obviously, Tim Murray and the capologist for the Buffalo Sabres did not learn the lesson that the Toronto Maple Leafs did by signing David Clarkson, and they're 2 different players at 2 different ages, but all the contract for Ryan O'Reilly is signing bonus. $1 million is base salary. And like for the first year, I think the cap hit, the money out of pocket is $11 million. $10 million is signing bonus, and everything for the 7 years, it's $1 million base, and the rest signing bonus, which means it's unbuyoutable if something goes wrong. So there's that deal, and then there was the deal yesterday for Vladimir Tarasenko that the Blues signed, which was 8 years for the same $7.5 million cap hit. Russ, I'll ask the question that somebody posed online. What team is better off? What team will benefit more from those long-term deals?
Well, I mean, St. Louis for sure, because I could tell you Tarasenko's an all-timer as far as his work ethic, I watched him play in the World Juniors in Buffalo with a totally dislocated shoulder, and he still scored a goal, and he helped will his team back. We all know about that. I've talked about it. Very tough kid, great skater, great vision. I mean, I don't know what else you would want. And we were talking about this yesterday while the lull was happening at Dev Camp. And, my basic idea was they had to do this. But even before the deal was announced, there's going to be more max deals coming. You have to sign these young players now to max deals like the NBA. There is no choice. If you feel as a franchise guy, that's what you have to do. Because guess what? If you don't do it and you only, do what the fans want and say, oh, just give him 5 or 6 years. Well, at the end of that 5 or 6 years, he's going somewhere else. 99, because you're going to be capped out. And so where's he going to go? If the KHL's around, he'll go there. And if not, he's going to another competitor. Mm-hmm. So these days you have to do that. Now, the O'Reilly one's different. The O'Reilly one, is it too much term? Yeah. Is it too much money? Yeah. At least they got a young player. He skates well. He's good on faceoffs. He can be a tough guy, although he was a binger last year, which is kind of funny. But he can be that player. I think he was playing a particular role for Patrick Waugh, and I think the role will change. But let's be real, too. I mean, Tim Murray has been overpaying for players now for a while. Terry Pegula has no problem with it because they've gotten so far into the cap that it doesn't matter. One day it's going to matter. Right. One day the Buffalo Sabres are going to be like everybody else, and all of a sudden the cap will matter. Today it doesn't matter, so they can continue with these kinds of deals. You know, nobody talks about Matt Molson's contract anymore. Is that worth it?
Well, yeah, I mean, at that point, they were looking to get to the cap floor.
I know.
So, you know, they gave him probably $2 million more a year than any other team would have given him. He's not a $5 million player. He's probably
and that's my point. I'll take the O'Reilly contract over the Molson.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the one positive is O'Reilly's 24. He really hasn't even entered the prime of his career. Whereas Matt Molson, I think Matt Molson just turned 30. I think he's 29 or 30 years old. And he's had probably the best years of his career with John Tavares' wing. I don't know whether they're going to get anything out of that, you know, although he probably is either going to play with O'Reilly or play with Eichel this year. Probably O'Reilly, because I think he's too slow to play with Eichel.
Right, and that's probably true. Although Molson used to be really fast. But you're probably right. That's probably the way they'll play it. But again, these are deals now where it's unfortunate because, you know, fans of teams like the Rangers and Flyers and other teams that are close to the cap are really getting mad at these teams that are near the bottom of the cap, because now they're spending ridiculous money, and what that basically does is now it causes other players' salaries to inflate. So like Derek Stepan, while you know, probably going into the season, we all figured, he's going to get 5.5. You know, now he's looking like he's going to get more like 6.5 or 7, based on everything else that's going on, right? And if the Rangers only have $12 million free on the cap,
well,
that was another move.
I was going to ask you about that, Russ, because these contracts will contribute to, you know, the price point for a guy like Stepan, and maybe next year for a guy like Chris Kreider. You know, there are teams. I mean, when we know Chicago, we've been talking about that for a while. I mean, LA to a lesser extent, because right now the situation with them buying out, or, you know, the Richard situation and the Voynov situation are sort of fluid, but Boston, Chicago, the Rangers, LA, the teams that have been competitors for the Stanley Cup over recent years, they're in situations where the cap room is not great. I mean, Boston made their moves and they cleared out some room with the trade of Lucic and not having to pay Dougie Hamilton because they moved him. And, you know, but the Rangers are in the situation they're in right now. And I know that, and I'm bringing this back to the Leafs, but not to make it a point specific to them, but overall. Kyle Dubas, their assistant general manager, yesterday, I'm writing about this right now, said, you know, the Leafs are open for business in terms of teams who have contracts out there that they want to move. You know, and I'm paraphrasing here.
We talked about that the other day, yeah.
Right. They would, you know, if some team offers them a first-round pick, and I'll use the Rangers as an example.
They're like a player laundering team. It's like a money laundering situation, but they're player laundering.
Right. We'll take Dan Boyle off your hands. If Dan Boyle will waive his no trade clause, we'll take Dan Boyle and his $4.5 million contract off of his hands. It's only going to cost you a first round pick.
Right.
But I don't know how plausible that is. I mean, first of all, I don't know if I'm using specifically Boyle. I don't know whether he would waive his no trade.
He wouldn't waive it. There's no way he's leaving New York. So.
Right, but
somebody else. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like, otherwise, I don't see them trading Stepan, because if they trade Stepan, then all these moves that they've made to be a short-term, you know, to make a short-term run at the Cup, it's sort of, I mean, he's an important cog.
Yeah, they can't walk away from him. Even if it's a one-year deal, they can't walk away from him. But something else could happen as a result. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they thought that the trade that, you know, sending Hagelin out and bringing Edom back would open up enough room for them to be able to fit Stepan. And I said to Kevin Allen yesterday that, you know, maybe they can get another bridge deal out of Stepan, but
I don't think they can.
Yeah.
At first I thought they could, but now with the salaries the way they are, I think it's a 1-year deal. I originally thought they might be able to get a 2-year deal. Now I think it's a 1-year deal.
Well, and this is an interesting trend that's going on. Now, we criticized Edmonton back in the day for signing Hall, Eberle, Nugent Hopkins out of their entry-level deal to these long-term $6 million a year deals. And, you know, it hasn't paid off for them because they, you know, I mean, the team hasn't won. I don't think those players have really been a problem in terms of them earning their bucks, but the overall goal of them winning has not come to fruition. Now, and after that, there was the trend towards the bridge deal. Kadri and Stepan got bridge deals. Now you see this summer with Dougie Hamilton, with O'Reilly to a lesser extent because he was coming off a bridge deal, with Brandon Saad, that teams can't get these players, that these players won't accept bridge deals when they're in a situation when they have the teams that drafted them between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
This is something that going forward, a player going into RFA almost has more options than a player going into UFA because teams don't. The market out there for an unrestricted free agent, I expected Bolesky to get $5 to $6 million. He got 3.8, whereas the RFA.
Much. I'm sorry, that's still. I know we expected more. I thought it would be around 5. 3.8 still too much for a guy with 1 year track record, right? Isn't that what he has?
Yeah. Yeah, he had one good year.
And I heard his retort to that, and that was Boudreau put him in a different role before that, so now he was able to play a different role this year, more offensive role. That's great. Well, now he's really going to get a big offensive role against much tougher players. I think that's going to be the battle. Is now he's going to move up, and he's going to play on a line that's expected to score, not on a line that, hey, it's great when Bolesky scores.
No, I want to take this in a direction of someone I've mentioned many a time, and I'm mentioning him. I'm not mentioning him in connection to the Leafs, but overall in general, and that's Steven Stamkos. Now, Stamkos is a UFA at the end of next season. Everybody expects him to re-sign in Tampa. I mean, Tampa is on the verge of, very likely they're going to make the Stanley Cup. They're going to get to at least the conference final next year. I mean, I think them, Washington, the Rangers are in that mix for the Eastern Conference title. They could get to the Stanley Cup. They could be what everybody was saying. They're like Chicago was, before they made their first final. They have the depth of the organization. Now they have the experience of being to the Cup, but their situation is, and they may very well open up the pocketbook and sign Stamkos to what he will expect to get, which is Kane Taves money, which is $9.5 to $10 million.
Right. But
that is not going to be the end of it, Russ, from my point of view, because maybe they buy themselves a year or two of Stamkos at that amount. But once the deals for Palat and Kucherov, I think Kucherov is a RFA next year. Palat, Kucherov, Tyler Johnson, all these players that are secondary players behind Stamkos, once those deals come up, those bridge deals, they're going to either have to walk away from those guys or consider moving Stamkos.
Yeah, but they're not going to. They will have some casualties. It won't be Stamkos, but they'll have them. They just will. It's just that's the way it is. The Rangers didn't want to give up Hagelin. They did. Certainly the Blackhawks didn't want to give up Saad. They did. One of those guys that you mentioned probably won't be there. That's the reality. And maybe they win a cup before that, and then they say, all right, well, at least we're able to do that. Because the way the system is set up, it's not set up for you to be able to win multiple cups anymore. And no team has done it since the Red Wings, and there's no mistake about it. The cap is causing a lot of that.
Yeah, but the situation that I see here is sort of a repeat of what happened with the Leafs with Kessel. I'm not comparing Kessel to Stamkos because Stamkos is a much more dominant, much better player. But Stamkos reaches 27, 28, 29 years of age, making $10 million, and they have players younger that they're going to have to pay. Say Kucherov, if he has another good season, pay in the $5 to $6 million range. Johnson in the $7 million range. Who knows what they pay Palat and some of these other guys? They're going to have to open up and sign Victor Hedman, and that will be expensive. Whether the decision is okay, well, Stamkos is maybe 3 years away from starting to slip down.
I've got the answer. I've got the answer for it. To me, the answer is clear. They're going to do it the same way the Blackhawks have, and they're going to say, hey, Ben Bishop, we've appreciated your service when his contract runs out, and they're going to go with Vasilevsky, and Vasilevsky's good. They've got him, for a couple more years, and then they'll have him under RFA for a couple more years after that, and that's where they're going to save the money in net.
And then they walk away from Braden Coburn when his contract expires, and
Garrison, and that's what they're going to do. And they'll turn over the older players, and they'll get other ones at the deadline, guys on 1-year deals, whatever. But they won't be spending like Henrik Lundqvist money between the pipes.
Do you think? I mean, there's no doubting Lundqvist is one of the best goaltenders in the league. But do you think, secretly Jeff Gorton is and maybe Glenn Sather is regretting paying him the amount that they're paying? I mean, he's making over $8.
Right. No, I don't think so. I don't think so, because we have to remember Lundqvist is very marketable. And they're in New York, and he sells seats, and he looks good. And besides being one of the best goalies in the game, he's the best dressing goalie in the game, and he gets a lot of press for it, and he sells a lot of jerseys. And so, that all plays into, remember Reggie Jackson wanted to get paid for people who showed up. Hey, you got to pay me more because people show up to see me play. People show up to see Henrik Lundqvist play.
One of the viewers in the chat is asking a question here, and I'll put it to you, Russ. Okay. Do you think that the Rangers can keep both Kreider and Stepan long term, or will one have to go?
Well, I think they want to, and I think after they sign this deal with Stepan, they'll negotiate with him. But that's up to Stepan. It's probably no longer up to the Rangers. I mean, it's just unless Keith Yandel gets moved, and all of a sudden there's a lot of freed up money. And maybe that will be the plan down the road here during the season. So get Stepan signed for the 1 year and then see what you can do. And I'm sure Stepan and his agent will be aware of that, because if all of a sudden some free money becomes available, then he can get more. But is he going to be willing to take less money? I haven't seen many players that have. Go look at David West, right? He's made $88 million in his career, and now he's going to play for $1.5 million, I guess, in San Antonio, right? Because he wants to play for a winner. Will Derek Stepan do that? No.
Yeah, I mean, will Derek Stepan take a 1-year deal? And this is the point that Kevin made. Not that it's likely, but these players want security. They want that long-term money, because I mean it's guaranteed. This is not like the NFL where if you're an idiot and you blow off a pack of firecrackers.
Now there's somebody from the Buccaneers, so it's 2 now.
Well, there's 2. Okay, so 2 idiots. So I mean, and your $60 million contract gets yanked off the table once they find out that you're in the infirmary somewhere. I mean, the money is guaranteed. Ask Mark Savard. Ask Nathan Horton. The money is guaranteed, even if you get injured.
Right.
So you're out of luck if you sign a 1-year deal and you have a career-ending or career-threatening injury. So when these guys have the opportunity to strike the iron while it's hot, they're going to do it.
Yep. And the 1 year for him, the term's going to be higher. There's no question about it.
Yeah. So
on a 2 year, he'd be willing to give up a little bit. And on a longer one, he'd be willing to give up a little more. But on 1 year, it's going to be high.
Yeah, and the thing is that the resolution to the situation, this is where I think the Rangers are sort of painted in a corner here. They would have ways of sort of alleviating their cap problem, but every move that they make to do that sort of affects their short-term goal of being able to be competitive to win the cup in the next couple of years. Like, they could trade Dan Girardi, but Dan Girardi's an integral part of their first 2 defensive pairings. So that really is counterproductive in a way.
Right. I mean, I know people have talked about it, and it wouldn't be a bad move, but they're not going to do that. And so at the end of the day, the 2 things that happened that I talked about a while ago that have started to come true are the Boyle and Tanner Glass signings together. That's 4.5. That's $6 million. Right there's your Stepan contract practically, and then you traded for Yandel. So now that's where they're sort of backed into the corner. Is if they were able to get out from let's say Dan Boyle's contract right now, they'd probably give Stepan long term. They don't want to do anything with Yandel yet because they do feel like they're a cup team. But if they see some point during the season that they could play without him, or maybe they're not a cup team, then they will look to move that and try and sign Stepan long term. And that's why I say get him just signed to the 1-year deal, and he'll have to just fend off the media when they're asking him questions, and that's just going to be the way it is.
Another question from the chat was, will the Flyers and Ron Hextall be able to beat some general manager over the head and get somebody to take Vinny Lecavier's final 3 years off of the books?
Untradeable. The only way he becomes tradable is if all of a sudden under Dave Haxtell's system he starts scoring goals. Then you might be able to do something with him. Until then, even the Leafs wouldn't touch him.
Yeah, I honestly think that Vinny is going to be a buyout after this year because the contract was front loaded.
Right.
He had 2 years left. The money, I think, was $3 million each for each year of the last 2 years. So if they bought him out, it would be $4.5 million spread over 4 years. It would be a little over $1 million. So they have that escape there. I think they just sort of would have to, tough it out this year and hope that he can contribute as a veteran. But yeah, I mean, I just like, I'm actually surprised like that LA bought out Richards. But if you look at it, or not, excuse me.
They avoided Richards.
Well, they avoided, but I see the thing is, I think that in the end, and I'm not
aware, they were going to buy him out, but they never went through with the process, so we don't know for sure.
Right, and so if they buy him out, it's like 1.4 for 10 years, and if they buy him out,
how old is this mug? It's Comp USA, if you remember them.
Oh, jeez, wow. Where's Computer City when you need it? Yeah, but no, an interesting thing that happened with Edmonton, and I don't know what player they decided to go to arbitration with, but they decided to go to arbitration with one of the players on their roster for the specific purpose of opening up the second buyout window later in the year. And the speculation is they're going to buy out either Nikita Nikitin or Ben Scrivens. They traded for Anders Nilsson, the old Islanders goalie who was in Chicago Blackhawks organization. They swapped a prospect for him, signed him to a 1-year deal for $1 million. So some people think that means they're going to buy out Scrivens. But Nikita Nikitin is making $4.5 million and has 1 year left in his deal. So, I mean, an interesting move there by Chiarelli because, I mean, you would have thought that, I guess they didn't know whether they were going to get Sekera signed on that long-term deal, and they were sort of hedging their bets, and maybe this was part of the plan all along. But
my guess is, based on the fact that they seem to be building goaltending depth, that Scrivens will be that guy, because they also have Lauren Dressat down in the system, and he's a pretty good prospect too. He's maybe a year or two away, so and he'll start as a backup for sure. But that's another guy that's in their system. So I think Scrivens would be on the way out.
I mean, I think the Washington Capitals, to my mind, have made I don't know about the best.
They always do, but we can't get too crazy about the Caps anymore because, I love Barry Trotz. We had Trotz on our show. This guy is a tremendous human being. He used to be a scout, so we loved him because he had scouting stories. At the end of the day, though, Caps as an organization, now they've got to prove it to me, right? Because they're sort of getting like the Sharks. No matter who the coach is, no matter who the players are, they seem to still be underwhelming.
Yeah.
And until I see that breakthrough year happening, it's going to be very hard for me to sign on the dotted line for anything Washington Capitals.
Well, I mean, the goaltender, who of course I'm drawing a blank. Holtby is an RFA. He's going to make big money this summer. They haven't signed him to the deal yet, but I'm assuming that's not going to be a problem. They re-signed Kuznetsov, and then in free agency and then a trade, they bring in TJ Oshie and Justin Williams. I mean, they really didn't lose a ton in consequence. Although I like Joel Ward, but he's 34 years old. They got rid of Eric Fair. And they lost Mike Green.
Once they knew they weren't playing any outdoor games, Eric Fair had to go. That's just as simple as that.
Oh yeah. Him and Ty Conklin are the outdoor game MVPs. But
absolutely.
No, I mean, just on the surface of it, it looks like they made the best moves so far in free agency. I mean, I think that Justin Williams still is a difference maker, and I like Oshie as an ad. I mean,
I like him as an ad too. I don't want to overestimate TJ Oshie's value to the NHL game, where he really gained his notoriety in the Olympic game. It's different in the international game. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. Is he a superstar player? No, he's not.
one thing that I don't think that Calgary counted on in terms of an after effect of the Dougie Hamilton situation. And maybe they did know. Maybe this was the reason why they went all out to trade for Hamilton, is what conceivably could go on with Mark Giordano. I mean, I haven't seen anything since that initial report. And we all know, like, when an agent or when there's speculation in the media of what the player is looking for in terms of a deal, that's sort of like the high water mark, and then the teams will come down.
It's the sticker price.
Right, exactly. But when the sticker price in this instance for a 31-year-old defenseman who, like I said, if he had stayed healthy, was my guy for the Norris Trophy.
Sure.
When the sticker price is max 8 years and $9 million per, sayonara.
But it won't be that. It won't be that. And if all of a sudden they start becoming a real force in the West, he'll drop his money a little bit. He will. He's a team guy. I don't think he's going to go crazy. He is looking for his big payday, don't get me wrong, and he deserves that. But I think there'll be some middle ground there. And the middle ground might be, hey, he only gets a 4-year deal, and then he gets free agency when he's 35. Maybe that's where it's going to go.
Yeah, but I mean, it was an interesting opening salvo because
now the NHL, there's 40-year-old defensemen again. So, Doyle's 40. I mean, so 35.
Stefan Robidas is available.
Yeah, Stefan Robidas. I mean, there's some older defensemen in this league. Brooks Orpik isn't getting any younger, talking about the Capitol. So I think at 35, he'd still get signed. Wow.
Yeah, well, I know that Ack posted something this morning about Dion Phaneuf rumors, and honestly, I mean, I'm not doubting those rumors are out there, but the indications that I've been getting through media reports, but also through just people talking to me about Phaneuf, it doesn't sound like Phaneuf is going anywhere, at least in the short term. It seems like the Leafs are.
I mean, Babcock's starting to talk about him, and I don't think he would have talked about him. I think they would have said, Mike, sort of lay off that subject until we know what's going on. I think now they know it's pretty safe he's going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, Babcock mentioned him in a positive light at his opening press conference.
Right.
So, which to me is an indicator that, because the Detroit talk dropped off right after the playoffs, right after the Stanley Cup final. They said Detroit was no longer interested, which means to me that Babcock was the one who was behind.
Well, and then Detroit got Mike Green, right? So then now they're clearly weren't interested.
Right. I mean, and of course, Detroit was interested in moving Stephen Weiss as part of the Phaneuf deal to get the Maple Leafs to pay that, the last 3 years of that bad contract, rather than them having to buy it out, which they ended up doing. But so it really wasn't they were giving up Brendan. I mean, the reported deal at the end of the near the deadline was Brendan Smith and Timu Pulkkinen. So, I mean, the Leafs weren't really, and probably Detroit was asking to have some of that contract, the $7 million contract, paid. I think what is going on here, I still think eventually Phaneuf will be moved, but I think what is going on here is that they're going to try to improve the overall outlook throughout the NHL of Phaneuf. If they make him, say, the number 3 defenseman on that team, have him, do the penalty killing, have him play, say, 18 to 20 minutes, and let him loose and be the type of defenseman that he normally – he's a guy who loves to hit. He's a guy who loves to stir it up. And I think the Leafs under Carlisle and even under Ron Wilson have put the clamps on him and said, don't go out there and do that because we need you on the ice. We need you on the power play.
I think if he plays the same kind of game Erickson played for Babcock, it'll help him.
Right. Right, exactly. And if he does that, I think he starts dropping some bombs and he starts hitting players. He may get suspended a couple times, but the reputation of that guy will skyrocket because teams around the playoffs want a difference-making defenseman with a physical edge. And Dion Phaneuf has a physical edge, but what they've been trying to have him do is play more under control over the last few years, and he's just not I don't think you get the best Dion Phaneuf if you have him playing so under control that he limits himself.
So I want to ask a question to the chat room. I'm going to reverse it and say, for the 2018 World Junior Championships, what American city would they like to see that game hosted in? And I got an interesting email today. I won't read the whole thing.
Okay.
And I want to say right off the bat, I am not a political person. So the fact that a senator contacted me, I have no idea if he's Republican or Democratic. I could just tell he's a hockey guy. And that's how I read it. The guy's name is Bob Casey, and he's out of Pittsburgh, and made a very good point that's saying, hey, they're a big-time hockey city. And his letter to Renee Fassel was great because he's like, hey, since the late 1800s, when the first indoor skating rink was open and ice hockey was introduced to the city, the sport's been there, and there's a lot of nice things after that. And I've been to a lot of events in Pittsburgh, and they've all run well. They really have. The Console is a tremendous building. Mm-hmm. I love it as a media guy because to me it's the only 5G building out there, but it's also got great sightlines for fans. And there's great food in that city. There's a lot of hotels, and they're very inexpensive. Unless you stay in the city. If you stay in the city of Pittsburgh, the hotels are expensive. But if you stay just a couple of minutes outside of any of the bridges, you could get very reasonably priced hotels. And so I've been to a lot of events there, and I see what they're talking about. Why would it automatically go to Detroit? I think Pittsburgh has shown, they did the Frozen Four. They've been able to host big events, and I'd like to see it there.
I'm putting you on the spot here because I don't know. I believe next year is the reverse of last year. It's Montreal and Toronto. Montreal would be getting the final, and Toronto gets all the.
That's what I believe too. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do we know what's going to be for 2016 and 2017? Do we know the destinations yet?
I'm looking it up because sometimes I don't know these things.
Yeah, because I know, and I don't think I thought it was 2018, but it might have been in the future. That one of the bids for the World Juniors was going to be in Arizona, but with all the upheaval with the ownership there, that that bid was in question. I don't know.
2016 is Helsinki.
Okay.
And 2017. Oh, 2017 is actually co-hosted again with Montreal and Quebec.
Oh, okay.
Let's see what 2015.
Okay, then I got it wrong. Then that's why I asked the question.
No, and you know what? And it's hard for me to keep track of that too.
Yeah.
So many things. And I knew there was another one that was going to be co-hosted. 26. Oh, I said 2016. No, we're right. Yeah.
2016.
No, we're good.
Yeah. Okay. So next year.
Next year is Helsinki. After that is Toronto, Montreal, and after that, then we're talking maybe Pittsburgh. And I think Pittsburgh would be good. I think.
I know that Buffalo is making another play for another one because, and it would be better. It would be better this time around in Buffalo. It wasn't bad in Buffalo, but the one thing was.
Buffalo shut down the minute it was over, though. That was the bad thing. Like the minute Tarasenko scored and the minute Russia came back, that Labatt's Ale House was empty, man. When I walked down the street, it was crickets.
Well, everybody was scrambling to get over the peak.
It was something hockey house. It was something hockey house, and that place was empty, man. Molson Hockey House, I think, and it was empty.
Yeah, everybody was scrambling to get over the bridge. I mean, I know people were, because there was parking gouging going on in Buffalo. They were charging $50 to $100 for parking these.
I parked in that lot, the same lot I parked in this year when I went to the All-American Prospects game. I put my little ticket in the thing, and I think I paid $7 all day. Come on,
they were taking
blocks. They were walk 2 blocks.
They were taking advantage of the rubes coming over the border who had never come over before. Yeah. Sorry, Canadians. I'm just teasing. But no, I know the Buffalo, and the thing is now with the Harbor Center and we're going to find out next year.
Harbor Center's tremendous.
Yeah, we're going to find out next year with the NHL draft being in Buffalo, but there's going to be, people are going to find the experience a lot better in Buffalo for the draft than they did for the World Juniors a few years ago because there's a lot more hotels downtown. There's a lot of businesses. It's really improving in downtown Buffalo, so there are things to do and places.
Well, as you pointed out to me, that area under the bridge has all been revitalized. It's sort of like a mini South Street seaport that you see in like New York and in Philly. And that's kind of nice, too. That looks like that's got potential.
Yeah. Well, good show, Russ.
Yep.
Well, like I said, we will have Eck and Kevin Allen back tomorrow. Thanks. What's that?
Who are we having? I forget these guys. Who are these other guys?
Some guy named Eklund and this dude. I think he writes for some paper, some little thing called USA something. Yeah.
I guess I heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I use it to line the bottom of my. Oh, never mind.
You don't own a bird, so you can't use that joke.
Yes. For Russ Cohen, this is Michael Lagello of HockeyBuzz.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.